Today we're going to discuss the immigration stream through education and a very unique approach that's available to international students in Canada, which in our perspective is a fundamental aspect of a future plan for an international student that considers relocating to another country for a certain number of years to study in that country and then thinking about their future or what's going to happen after they're done studying. Whether it is they want to work in that country and receive experience in terms of work, or they want to actually reside in that country, immigrate, and stay in that country. So Canada offers a specific stream called the Canadian Experience Stream. What is unique about this stream is that it is based on work experience that's gained in Canada. So how does an international student get to that point of being able to work in Canada? There is a specific law that allows international students that study in Canada, graduate from a certain program in Canada, whether it's a diploma or a bachelor or whatever it is, to be able to receive a work permit, or they call it a postgraduate work permit, that allows them to work legally in Canada for a certain number of years. And then through that work permit, they can actually receive the enough eligibility points towards their immigration status under CEC or the Canadian Experience class. So, and we'll cover the process and we'll talk about the details. So in general, from a process perspective, an international student would come to Canada, study for a certain number of years, go ahead and graduate, receive a postgraduate work permit that allows them to work in any province or any company that they want to work in. And then after gaining certain number of months of experience through that work permit, then they can apply on their the CEC class. So in terms of eligibility, in terms of the way that you would qualify for this program, in recent months, the Canadian government actually implemented a new regulation when it comes to the learning institutions in Canada, something called a DLI, or a Designated Learning Institution. Certain universities or colleges or institutions were designated by the Citizenship and Immigration Services Office to become a designated learning institute. That designated learning institute can issue certain acceptance letters for international students to be able to apply for a study permit and then come to Canada to study at that particular university or that particular institution. So for you to be eligible for this program, the first thing you need to do is you need to come to Canada and you need to study at a designated learning institution. Once you do that, you need to gain 1 year or 12 months of full-time work experience post your graduation using your postgraduate work permit to be able to apply for the CEC class. So that 1 year of experience that you gain in Canada after you graduate needs to happen within 3 years from the day that you apply for the application. So let's say you worked for 1 year and you applied, you're good. You worked, you did not apply for CEC right away, you have a couple more years to apply for that. So it's 1 year of gained experience in the previous 3 years from the day that you want to apply for your permanent residency under the CEC class. So the way that occupations are considered in Canada is based on something called an NOC, or an NOC code, which is the National Occupational classification of jobs. There is level A, B, and C, and there are different types as well. When it comes to the NOC codes that are considered under the CEC class, you've got NOC level 0, NOC type A. So these are considered the professional jobs or the highly skilled jobs. And also you've got the technical jobs, which is the NOC type B. So you could either go in level 0 or A, and also the flip side, you can do a technical job under NOC type B. Depends on the education that you're going to receive in Canada, depends on your the specific program that you applied in, and the experience that you're going to gain at the employer that you're going to be with. So we said 1 year of work experience in Canada you're going to gain after you graduate from your university. You have to be within the NOC codes that are considered under this program. And then the third thing is your language proficiency, whether it is English or French or both. And then that matches to the NOC code that you're going to be applying under. So if you're going to do NOC level 0 or type A, then you're going to be required to be at CLB level 7, which is the Canadian Learning Benchmark level 7, which equalizes to certain number of points that you need to score on your IELTS exam or your French test exam, depends on what language you're going to after. Now, CLB 7, that is for the professional jobs under NOC 0 and A. And also, when it comes to B level, that is going to be CLB level 5. So it's lower points required for your English proficiency. So CLB 7 for 0 and A, CLB 5 for type B, which is the technical jobs. And then the next eligibility criteria is obviously this is a federal exam, this is a federal program that is outside of Quebec. Quebec, they have their own system, so you have to actually reside outside of Quebec. So you need to get your language, you need to make sure that you graduated from a Canadian program, from your university, you need to get 1 year of experience in Canada, and then you need to prove your English or French proficiency based on the NOC level that you're going to come in. That makes you eligible for the program and being able to apply for your permanent residency under the CEC code. So in terms of family members, you're actually going to be able to include your spouse or your common law partner part of your application, and you'll also be able to include all your children that are under the age of 19 and unmarried. There is one condition for children that are over the age of 19, as long as they're unmarried, is if they're financially dependent on you, whether it is for it's a mental illness or a physical condition that makes them financially dependent on you before they turn 19 and continuously stayed and remained dependent on you, and then you can include them in the application. But rule of thumb is 19 years, unmarried and below, and also your spouse and common law partner, you'll be able to include both of them on your application. So what do you do today? I mean, you're sitting as a high school student in your country right now outside of Canada, or you're sitting as a student that graduated from a university with a bachelor or a diploma outside of Canada, and you're looking to do your master's, you're looking to do your higher education, or whatever it is. So you want to come and study in Canada, okay? But you're also thinking about, I want to immigrate to Canada as well, but I want to do that through my education, through my studies in Canada. So the process that you would have to follow is going to be a 6-point system that you would have to go with. Number 1, receive a letter of acceptance from a designated learning institute in Canada. This allows you to go to step 2, which is to apply for your student permit. So you will take your letter of acceptance and meet all the conditions for a student permit. You show that you are able to finance your studies, show that you're admissible to Canada, and meet the student permit regulations, and then you'll be able to get your student permit so you can legally study in Canada. Step 3 is if you're from a country that is not visa exempt, you would be able to apply at the same time for a temporary resident visa that will allow you to travel back and forth to Canada while you're studying in Canada. So the student permit allows you to legally study in Canada, but for you to travel back and forth to Canada, you either need to be from a visa-exempt country. This way you just use your passport to travel back and forth. You don't require to apply for a visa prior to coming to Canada. Or if you're not part of the list of the countries that are visa-exempt, then you need to get a TRV, or a temporary resident visa, for you to be able to travel back and forth. So that's number 3. Number 4, around 2 years, 3 years, 4 years later after you studied in Canada, depends on your major, depends on the degree that you're pursuing. Once you complete it, the government is going to allow you to do the following. For every year that you studied in Canada, you're going to be issued a postgraduate work permit for the same duration of your studies. So if you studied for 1 year, you get a work permit for 1 year. You studied for 2 years, you get a work permit for 2 years, up to a maximum duration of 3 years. So if you studied at a university for 3 or 4 years, you are going to get a postgraduate work permit for a maximum period of 3 years. Now this postgraduate work permit allows you to work in any province, at any employer. You can pick the employer that you want based on the education that you have, and you work for them for as long as you have the work permit that's going to be valid. So right after you graduate, you go into step number 4, which is to receive your postgraduate work permit. The step after that is you start looking for jobs. You start looking for something that's related to you, and you work for 1 year at a minimum to gain that Canadian experience full-time. Now, when I say full-time, that is 30 hours of work per week, or equivalent to that. In, let's say, 2 jobs that you had, you worked for 15 hours per week in each one of these 2 jobs, cumulative of 30 hours per week. So as long as you're putting in 30 hours per week, you're considered as either a full-time employee, or you have 2 part-time jobs, and the cumulative of that comes out to 30 hours a week, and then that meets the requirement of the 1 year work experience in Canada required for you to apply for CEC. Okay? So this is the 5th step. And the last step is to apply for your permanent residency. So you get your work experience, you submit your PR application to be able to go under the CIC system to be considered for the CEC class. Now what changed in 2015 is that you don't apply for permanent residency anymore. The CEC stream has been now moved under express entry. So express entry, as some of you might know, is a new phase of immigration in Canada in terms of the way that you apply for immigration. So you don't apply for permanent residency anymore. You actually show your intent to immigrate. And then after that, you create a profile, you go into system, you go into a particular pool, and then you meet the requirements of the express entry system. You go under the CEC stream, you show your intent to immigrate under CEC. Then you get something called an ITA, which is the invitation to apply, and then you go ahead and apply for your permanent residency. So it's a different process than what immigrants are used to in the past. It's just a different way to do things, but it is the ultimate goal at the end of the day is for you to receive your permanent residency through a different approach, which is the express entry system for express entry. There are some provinces that sign agreements with the government of Canada to be able to offer their own CEC streams or their own immigration streams. These are considered PNP programs or the provincial nominee programs. So Ontario could have their own, another, Manitoba will have their own, New Brunswick will have their own, and then they would relax their regulations for that particular CEC stream for a particular immigrant to be able to move to their province and nurture their economy locally there because they're interested in specific knowledge, specific experience that they want to have for their province. So one of the options that you could potentially have is after you graduate and you complete your 1 year of experience, you can apply under a particular CEC stream under Express Entry under the CEC stream. So you can go for a PMP under CEC in Express Entry, or you can just go apply under CEC in Express Entry without going under a PNP program, and then you can just go ahead and work with CIC directly for you to be able to receive that. So just to recap, the Canadian Experience class is one of the easiest systems or the easiest paths for immigration for international students that are looking to work and potentially live long-term in Canada. You would come and study for a certain number of years, 3 to 4 years, depends on the program that you're interested in. Graduate from a Canadian Designated Learning Institute, receive a postgraduate work permit, work for 1 year, which is 12 months in the past 3 years before you apply. Then you submit your application for permanent residency, which is now under the Express Entry stream, so that you show your intent. You go into the system, certain number of time goes by, and then you're going to go ahead and submit your application for permanent residency and stay in Canada for long term.